this region where you see the mammillary body, you see these white areas here, this is all part of the midbrain. And if we go back a little bit farther, you see these two big bumps here. Okay? See those? Two big bumps. This is the pons. This is part of the hindbrain.
Part of the what?
Hindbrain.
Hindbrain.
Hindbrain. Okay? We've got forebrain, midbrain, hindbrain. Okay? And so beyond the pons, you have this other area which is now tapering, kind of a cone. It goes from here, and this is, as Adam Sandler would say, the medulla oblongata. Okay, or the medulla. Okay? And it's called oblongata because it's oblong.
I've been waiting for medulla oblongata.
So the pons and the medulla are, again, the major components that you see macroscopically of the hindbrain. Now, when we look at some of the nerves, and actually beyond them is the spinal cord. Okay, so that's the spinal cord right there. I'm holding my spinal cord, not the tape. So the other thing that you can see here, we can see some of the cranial nerves, and we've seen two of them, 1 and 2. Okay, and then the trochlear nerve, which I think is cranial nerve number 4, is here. This is one of the nerves that actually helps move the eyeballs, believe it or not. And then the other big one that you see here is this guy, big stump right here. See how big that is? That's really big. Almost as big as the optic nerve. See that guy right there? It's cut off. And actually, if we look at an intact specimen, here's the same thing. There's some fibers of it there. Goes up here. It goes way up front. This is part of it there, and it has another branch there. That's called the trigeminal nerve. There's 3 major branches. It is the major mixed nerve that innervates the head. So this is a motor and sensory nerve. So when next time you go to the dentist and they drill on your teeth, they're going to give you a deadening agent to deaden the branches of the trigeminal nerve, the alveolar branches. Okay. Okay.
Now, does that just fall under this cranial nerve part?
Yeah, it's cranial. So if you look on page 5, last page, trigeminal nerve.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Trochlear is number 4.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Now some of the others, we may see others. I think, for example, this little guy right here might be the abducens, but I'm not 100% certain because it's kind of torn up. So, those are the big 4 that we'll see for sure. Now, I would just say that what I want you to make sure that, and I've given you a little mnemonic aid there to remember these guys, mainly in terms of, whether they're motor, mixed, or sensory, and at least one function. That's what page 5 is for. Okay? And we're going to talk about this again. So you'll see this again, we get into lectures. So it's not just here. So now, oh yes. So we saw, okay, now we buy spinal cord. Okay, we got to see the pineal gland. So on this one, what I'm going to do for this little guy right here is I'm going to, yeah, this will work. I'll just do this. Basically, we're going to see this twice. So this is the cerebellum. If I bend this down, of course, I'm breaking part of the midbrain, the fiber tracts here. But I want to do this because we saw the corpora quadrigemina before, right? And now I'm going to pull down on the corpora quadrigemina and lift up the cerebrum, sort of, okay? Let's see if I can do that on this one. Ripping and tearing, okay. And so when I do that, you see it looks like it's sticking its tongue out at you. See that little knob there?
That's the gland?
See that knob? That's the pineal gland. See it right there?
So it's under this.
It's basically between the 2 halves of the corpora quadrigemina and above them. Okay? And then also, if you look at this too, if I'm going to try and lift this up, you see if you look back towards underneath there, you see these 2 ridges of material that goes underneath the cerebrum there. These white areas, here's one on this side right over there that I'm pulling out. See that?
Yeah.
There's one there. There's one on the other
What is it
side.
you're pointing to now?
This part right here, where my thumb is, right in there, right there. Yeah.
Okay.
So there's one there and there's one on the other side. So point at that place for me again. Look, I just ripped off. So right there, that region that you're seeing right there is part of the thalamus. Okay, And that's, oops, I just almost ripped him apart. Well, that's what happens. So the thalamus is, as we'll see later on, is kind of a gateway to things, to getting to the higher brain. But the reason I say that is normally you don't see it from here. Normally, the way we see that is actually to cut the brain. Let's go to this guy because it's nice and clear. I need to wet him down so it doesn't dry out so much. We do that so you can see it this way, and you see this round area. It's kind of like white, light-colored white, round, kind of oval. See that?
Is that what we were just looking at?
Well, that's what you were looking at. The way these guys come together, those two, there's two knobs that are getting bigger this way, and they come together right in the middle. So if I cut that right in the middle, that's what you see, is this little white round area, okay? This is known as the intermediate mass. It's called intermediate because it's intermediate between the two lobes. And if you cut smack in the middle of it, you just separate it, and there's fiber tracks that go back and forth, but it connects the two thalamic lobes because we're bilaterally symmetrical, okay? So this is part of the thalamus. Everybody follow that? No? Okay, if you say no, that's fine, we'll do it again. Because it's important to understand it. If you figure this out, then it becomes really apparent. So, I'll do this one. This guy's going to give up the ghost here. So, if I do this, you can see right there, you see that?
Is the ventricle right there?
Well, yeah, it's up in there, yes. So this structure right here that I just ripped off,
Yeah,
that's the thalamus. And when I look at it from this side, here's the other part of the thalamus.
So that's like the inside of it.
Well, no, it's you got a thalamus. Think of my knuckles here as the thalamus.
Okay.
So you got one over here, and they're coming together in the middle.
Oh.
So I cut it. So what you're looking, this is what I see over here. Okay. So the intermediate mass is where the two thalamic lobes connect. They interconnect. Okay. Remember, we're bilaterally symmetrical. So typically, what we have on one side, we have on the other side. You've got to have some way to connect the two. Okay. Are you there with me? Okay, so cranial gland, okay, folliculi, hypothalamus. Okay, so now I want to switch gears slightly and focus solely, like pick a brain, any brain, on the sagittal sections here. Okay, so this one would be a good place to start. So again, we've seen this one before. We've got the dura mater and the arachnoid, which is melanistic right in here. And we've got this is one of the lobes of the cerebrum, okay? And then basically that'd be the gray matter, and the white matter is down over here. Now this line of white matter that you see here and that you see right over here, okay? That is a special, you'll see that there's a line of white matter right there. That's called the corpus callosum. This is a very important section of white matter. It's called a commissure, which means it is a set of fiber tracks that connects the two cerebral hemispheres together. Okay, so you see here's one, here's another one, same idea. Here it is here, there, and there it is over there.
So that's the ventricle inside then, is that
The
right?
ventricle is that opening in the side. We'll stay with him for a second, okay? So the significance of the corpus callosum is that it is the major linkage between these two halves of the brain. This is a major communication pathway. We're looking at 400 million bits per second of data that transfers back and forth. So everything that happens, both sides of your brains knows about instantaneously because of this. If you cut it, then you have split brain syndrome, which used to be done to relieve severe epilepsy, you know. And so, and that's another story that I'll talk about sometime when we have time. We don't have time. So, but it's real interesting, yeah. So now below that is an opening, okay? And we have these openings, you know, along with sheep, and yeah, that same thing. There's one there, okay? And so the significance of that is we have 4 ventricles within which the cerebrospinal fluid circulates. And what I'm looking for is one that has my formation structures. Where'd it go?
Or is that
No,
full?
no, I had a, man, you'd think I'd had these guys in front of me, and I did, but they're gone. How could I lose these
Somebody
brains?
stole one.
Well, they walked away. Okay, here they are. This is good. This will work. So here we have an opening here, and you see if I separate this out, forget the blood from the superior sagittal sinus here. I'm going to just spread this a little bit so you can see the lateral ventricle, which is right where my probe is. That's a ventricle, and it's a fluid. The CSF is circulating in that opening, okay? And you see this gray matter right there, this stuff. I should say stuff, it's not very... This material here, this tissue, is not just stuff. It's actually a very specialized blood plexus called the choroid plexus. This is a capillary network that basically filters the blood to produce cerebrospinal fluid. Okay? You find a part of the choroid plexus in each of the lateral ventricles. You find it in the third ventricle and the fourth ventricle. So there are 4 ventricles of the brain. All of
It's essentially a
open.
hollow
It's just a
area,
hollow
like
area. Absolutely.
like a sinus, but it's just
It's a hollow area of the brain. Yeah, absolutely. So if you've heard of hydrocephaly, fluid on the brain, when that happens, you have too much of this produced, and it squishes the cerebrum, and these ventricles get really large.
And that choroid plexus is inside the ventricle, but there's 3 different ones. Which one was it?
There's one in each of the 2 ventricles, so there's one in this one. Where's the other half of my brain?
Right there on top. Right
Oh,
there.
here, yeah. This one's got one, but it's closed. Now,
Okay.
notice that this ventricle is open. This ventricle has a covering over it.
Right.
Right? That covering has a name called the septum pellucidum. So it's kind of the oblique or opaque cover. So there, behind that is another choroid plexus.
Okay.
Okay?
But you have the lateral ventricle, third ventricle, fourth.
Okay, so you have 2 lateral ventricles, and then there's a third ventricle. So where's the third ventricle? So again, the third ventricle is right around the midbrain, so it's associated with the intermediate mass. And again, I'm going to set this half down, and I'm going to spread this other half here. And so here you can see a channel right in here. See that right there? That's a third ventricle. Can you see that, Tammy? I just spread that. There's an opening. I don't know how to do this because you're so far away. See that hole there? Right in there. There's a gap in there. And there's also some more of that choroid plexus right in there too. So the third ventricle, so you have these lateral ventricles like this. The third ventricle is kind of like this. But it goes around the intermediate mass and behind it. Okay? And so basically here's the third ventricle. It goes around behind this, around this other little structure right here, this little brown structure, which is the one we saw was sticking out at you,
Pineal gland?
the pineal gland. Okay? And it goes behind that, and it goes down through here, and then to this next gap right in here, which is at the base of the cerebellum, and that's the fourth ventricle. Okay? So it falls all the way down there, and there's one little piece that you need to see that gets before you get to the fourth ventricle. It shows nicely in this one. So this is a little bit offset, but what you see is this is third ventricle right up in here, and there's a little channel right through here that I'm beginning to put the probe through, and it comes out into this chamber right here. See that little chamber there? And you see there's a little flap that I push through. Looks like a little gate.
Yeah.
That's the aqueduct of Sylvius.
It's very exotic.
And that's from the third to the fourth?
Yeah, that
Yeah.
leads to the fourth ventricle.
Okay.
You go through the aqueduct of Sylvius
The valve
into
just
the
goes one direction.
yeah, into the fourth ventricle. Yeah, so it's pretty cool. Okay, and then the fourth ventricle is at the base of the cerebellum, and eventually from there it goes into the central canal of the spinal cord.
What
Which
drives
is
the movement of the cerebrospinal fluid?
well, in these regions around the lateral ventricles, the ependymal cells. Remember those? Those were one of the glial cells. They have cilia, and they pump it along. Okay, so that's one of the things. That's one of the main areas. Okay, so you can see as this guy's kind of falling apart, this other mass that we're seeing here is all part of the choroid plexus, which is producing CSF. Okay, so that's kind of a